Good evening. My name is Sonia Harper, and I'm a proud member of the Resident Association of Greater Englewood. Thank you for joining us tonight. But before we get to the show, I want to tell you a little bit more about myself and what brings me to this work with the Resident Association of Greater Englewood. See, as a teenager growing up in West Englewood, I experienced a lot of negativity, many of my friends even losing their lives to gun violence. I chose a career in broadcast journalism so that I could help to change perception of my community in order that people may change their minds about what's going on here and join hands to help to make things better. So after spending 10 years in the news, I returned home specifically to West Englewood to help organizations and residents there communicate better, but most of all, to help us all come together and collectively change our perceptions so that we may work together. At the Resident Association of Greater Englewood, we think that perception means a whole lot, especially when it comes to helping a community full of people who have been vilified and made to seem like they're not normal human beings in TV, in news, on radio, and in our everyday lives. So it brings me great pleasure and great honor to work with fellow residents of the Resident Association of Greater Englewood as we work to develop and create our own vision for our community. We're talking about reimagining Englewood tonight and debunking negative stereotypes. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned. Good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening. This is the Englewood Call, a live call-in show with the Resident Association of Greater Englewood. My name is Sonia Harper, and thanks for tuning in this evening. We want to invite you all to call into our show this evening. We have a wonderful topic, and we have wonderful guests. Tonight, we're going to be talking about reimagining Englewood. What does our vision for our own community look like, and how we're going to stop taking what others say about us so true and start to create our own visions of what it means to be an Englewood resident. So please, if you have comments, suggestions, or questions during tonight's programs, we invite you to call in. The number is 312-738-1060. But before we get into the show, we want to give you a little bit more information about who we are and what we do. We are, again, the Resident Association of Greater Englewood. You can always visit our website, www.rageenglewood.org. You can always give us a call at 866-845-1032 or shoot us an email at joinrage@gmail.com. And yes, you can also find us on social media. During the program tonight, if you're not able to get in, please put your comments, your suggestions, or even your positive news that you want to share on our social media networks. We're on Facebook, we're also on Twitter, and on Instagram. And a little bit about Rage. Who are we? Well, as our title suggests, we are residents. And we are residents from all wards of Greater Englewood. Yes, we have 6 different wards in Englewood, and we come from all of them. That's the 15th Ward, the 16th Ward, the 17th Ward, the 20th, and the 6th Ward. And so we're not only made up of residents, but also non-residents who also support our mission. So whether you're from Pilsen, Rogers Park, or Gage Park, you're welcome to be a member of the Resident Association of Greater Englewood. And so tonight we are going to get into our first guest. We have a wonderful guest who's going to be joining us tonight. She's a former Englewood resident, and she's written a book and is going to tell us more about it. But what we're focusing on today is reimagining Englewood. What is the Englewood that we want to love, that we want to know, or the Englewood that we used to love and used to know? Let's talk about what that looks like today, especially when we're in the time period where others are so busy at creating that vision for us, creating that vision through the news, creating that vision and that perception through their movies. As you see right there on the screen, you see the director, Spike Lee. And as everyone knows, he is currently filming a movie titled Chirac right now in Englewood. And there has been a bit of controversy in the community between people who actually live in the community and those who support the movie. And that basically folks in the community are tired of being branded as criminals and tired of being branded as Chirac. Combining the terms Chicago and Iraq to say, oh, this is a war-torn area. And so the show tonight really isn't about Chirac or how we feel about it, but it kind of goes beyond that and helping us to figure out who we are, what we are, and how we want to be perceived and how we will make sure that we're going to be perceived from this day on. So I am pleased to have our guest tonight, Miss Elaine Hegwood Bowen, and she is a former Englewood resident and author of Old School Adventures from Englewood, South Side to Chicago. She's also the proud parent of the smart rapper, chemist turned rapist turned humanitarian, Psalm 1. So, welcome to the show tonight, Miss Bowen. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me tonight, Sonia. It's good to be here.
Awesome. So, you heard our intro to the show tonight. You kind of saw how we're kind of taking a different spin on this title of Chirac in the community. I just kind of want to get your initial thoughts on the movie title or what you think that means or what it could mean for a community such as Englewood.
I think it throws a negative spin on the neighborhood. If you combining, like you even said, Chicago and Iraq. Englewood is much more than that. It's much more than we're reading in the papers and hearing on broadcast media. Englewood is being restored to a point where some neighborhoods they're not experiencing the rebirth in Englewood that I know that we are experiencing. So the Chirac name just throws a negative spin on it, but that's not always the way Englewood used to be.
Awesome. And tell me a little bit about your book. You actually have a book that has Englewood in the title, and it has no type of negative connotations to it. So that off the top makes me very interested. Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
I wrote this book. I started writing this book a couple years back, but last year when the book published in 2014, I wanted, and it says in my prologue, I wanted a representation of Englewood, the good things that I remember about Englewood. There was so much bad press going on. I wanted people to be able to pick up and read a first-person narrative about how life was in Englewood. My parents moved here in the mid-50s. They were part of the Great Migration from down south. They moved from Shaw, Mississippi, and bought a home in Englewood in 1959. My book covers from the mid-50s to the late 80s, growing up in Englewood and the experiences that we had as youth growing up.
Awesome. And can you tell me what were some of those big differences that you noticed when you were growing up as a youth, and maybe what you think is going on now, and what type of experience the youth today are having up, or what was some of the biggest challenges we faced as a community when you were coming up?
When we were coming up, they were mostly at that point the two-parent homes, and I'm not saying a single-parent home is bad. I'm just saying our norm was as any norm as any city. See, there are Englewoods, quote unquote, in every city in the United States. There are areas that were once thriving with people of color and are now struggling because of poverty and crime. So we grew up in a unit where we were taught social, to value each other socially, we spiritually, also culturally. So it was there was that family unit, and everybody on the block had that family unit, and so that's one of the big changes as far as growing up in Englewood. When I was growing up in Englewood many years ago, as opposed to how it is now in Englewood.
I gotcha. So tell me, what were some of your most fondest memories growing up in
Our
Englewood?
fondest memories, and even with my family, there were five children. We lived a block from 63rd Street. 63rd Street was our Michigan Avenue, so to speak. Now, anything you wanted on 63rd, and we lived a little close to Ashland. And I meet people who, grew up, and they may have grown up a little west of us, like on Peoria and Green and Halsted and other streets. But between Ashland and Halsted on 63rd, and I describe it in chapter 3 of my book, is there were just shops, a pawn shop, 63rd and Halsted, right across the street from the new Whole Foods, where that's going to be. That was like the Sears, the Weebos, the Kresge. We had movie theaters, so we didn't have to go downtown. I mean, we didn't have to go downtown for excitement. We stayed in the neighborhood for entertainment.
That sounds good, and it sure is not like that today.
No.
We have to definitely travel outside to do all of those things you talked about, to shop for some quality goods, to go and see a movie, to go to a pet shop, to do
Grocery
anything,
stores.
to go to a grocery
the
store.
most basic thing, a grocery store.
Yes, and you know what? It looks like we have a caller on the line right now. Thank you for calling this evening. The Englewood call. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to contribute something to the conversation, and I think that part of the phenomenon that exists in Englewood is a complex set of issues. On the one hand, the victories of the civil rights movement that led to desegregation were certainly an advancement for African Americans. On the other hand, it allowed those top-tier African Americans, the best educated, the professional class that lived on the south side and west sides of the cities like Chicago, to be able to leave, because they then were able to move to communities that they perceived to be more desirable, leaving places like Englewood without a business base, without a professional class, without mentorship and leadership, and leaving it essentially barren in many ways. So, and everyone knows that once you have that, it's a breeding ground for crime and unemployment and disenfranchisement. And you're absolutely right with regard to Spike Lee and his efforts. If he were truly interested in making a movie about what happens in places like Englewood, he could do a documentary, which would be wonderfully informative. This sort of thing is a Hollywood-esque movie. We saw the same thing when I was a young man in the 1980s, a movie called Colors. It did very little to actually talk about the socioeconomic and political issues surrounding gang life in L.A. Instead, it glorified the conflict that existed between Bloods and Crips and so forth. And this is going to be a movie where gang members and people who are on the wrong side of society are going to flock to see, and it's going to glorify them in a way that they've never been glorified before. They're going to be able to point to a screen and say, I made it onto a movie screen, and therefore my life is somehow legitimate. And that's the problem here, is that Spike Lee and people like himself are lending legitimacy to people who should not have it. Gang membership is not something that needs to be glorified on screen. It should be something that society rejects. You should not be able to run around with your chest held out and say, I'm a gang member. No, society should be able to say to you, that's something to be ashamed of, not something to be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very thorough analysis of the situation. And a lot of the things that you said are the exact same things that come up in our rage meeting. So you really hit on a lot of important points. Ms. Bowen, did you want to maybe add anything to what the caller?
I think in recent history, or the last couple of years, The Interrupters, that documentary with Amina Matthews and the violence prevention of the mediators, I think that was a good documentary, because it showed what people are doing on the ground in the neighborhoods, trying to mediate between the gang members. And and I do agree, you need to have a base. And doesn't have to be my book. It could be sociologists who have dealt with from UC, who have dealt with neighborhoods in the inner city in Chicago, need to inform, so we know that, this is just not people. our neighborhood was not an anomaly years ago. Our neighborhood was like any neighborhood on the north side or the in the suburbs. We all were there, parents raising their kids, raising them to be good, productive citizens, and youth weren't afraid to be out and to go out to the store or the restaurant, the fast food joint, to get candy.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Miss Bowen, and thank you so much for that. Before we move on for the rest of the show, I did want to ask you, what can a person expect when they read your book, or what do you think is the best thing that people walk away from with when they read your book?
Walk away with the sense of family. I keep saying the family and the productive family, and a sense of warmth, a sense of safety. I didn't have an issue in the neighborhood. I can't recall ever having an issue in the neighborhood. I think at one point some guy was shot and killed, and it was gang stuff, but that was rare. I had an issue when I went into Gage Park to go to high school, and the whites didn't want me over there. Up until that point, when I was a freshman in high school, I didn't experience any strife or any violence or anything.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We definitely look forward to hearing more great things about your book and more great things from you in the community and larger than the community. So again, the book is called Old School Adventures from Englewood, South Side of Chicago, by Miss Elaine Hegwood Bowen. Please, if you get a chance, check it out. Thank you, Miss Bowen.
Thank you.
And still moving on again tonight, we are talking about reimagining Englewood. I want to remind you that this is a call-in show, so please, we invite you to call in. You are watching CANTV's Hotline 21, the Englewood call, 312-738-1060. Please call in now with your comments or your questions. Tonight, we are now joined by our next guest, a very special guest. I'd like to introduce to you Miss Chardonnae Nash. Chardonnae is an Englewood resident. She is an honors student, and she's a senior. She's going into her senior year at Percy Julian High School. And she is, I hear, one of the youngest Rage member. So we are so proud to have her here. I've actually had the pleasure of working with Miss Chardonnae Nash at a couple of youth programs at Imagine Englewood. If so, I know how much of an amazing student and Englewood resident and Englewood youth she is. So tonight we're going to be asking you, Chardonnae, what's your vision for Englewood? What do you think about what you currently see in the community, and what would you like to see in the future?
I want to see more black-owned businesses. I want to see more housings that's not boarded up. I want to see more gardens. That's basically about it.
And what do you think having more gardens and more businesses, what would that do for the community?
It would show people, because image is everything. It would show us that we not what they say we are, dirty. We can show that we can be a place where people come to see, to watch us.
And so you mentioned, we're not how they say they are, or who are you referring to, or what are you referring to, this notion of who they say we are?
Social media, the government, the politics, people that don't know us, that live outside of our community.
And what do these people say? How do you, as a youth, you feel like all of these entities feel a certain way about Englewood residents, right? Mm-hmm. So tell me more about how that makes you feel, and what ways, what does that do to you, or how do you think that makes your peers feel?
It makes my peers it affects their mentality, it affects the way that they think and how they think that they're being perceived, and I feel like that's wrong, because not a lot of people can handle being perceived as a monster on TV. Yeah,
image is a big thing, especially when you're a young person, right? Isn't everything based off of how I look or how I think others feel about me? And so that's kind of a heavy burden as a young person, to think all of these gigantic entities in the world feel negatively about you because of the way that you or maybe others like you are portrayed in the media, correct?
Yes.
And so, yes, we've been talking a little bit about the Chirac, and it is not our main focus of the show tonight. But I do want to kind of contrast it or compare it to your vision for the community, or maybe what do you think a movie, or not even the movie, because we don't really know what it's about yet. What do you think the title of the movie does for that perception that you were just talking about? Do you think it helps us? What do you think, Chardonnae?
I don't per se agree with the title that they put because the meaning behind the title is not positive. It's a negative effect that's actually affecting the males per se in the community, and the outcome is becoming more negative.
I gotcha. So let's get off the negative, right? So tell me about what are some of the positive things in Englewood that you are a part of?
Rage, IEI, which is Imagine Englewood F, Ceasefire, Teamwork Englewood. I'm alumni Wentworth, and I'm just basically everywhere. Anywhere I could help, I'm going.
And what types of activities or campaigns or things do you do as part of these different organizations? Give us some examples of the types of things that you do with these organizations.
With Rage, since I knew them since grammar school, like I helped like with passing flyers, outreach basically. With IEI, I was a part of that organization. I was like, that's why I got mentorship from Miss Jean Hill. And with Ceasefire, I participated in this focus group with other females that lived in the same community as me. And with Teamwork Englewood, I just helped put together events that like Hoops in the Hood that help teens play basketball in a safe environment, because everybody know every boy and some of the girls like basketball.
That's right. So it sounds like to me, in your own way, you're kind of living the vision that you want for your community, and you're participating in the activities and the program that promote that. So way to go, Chardonnae. Before we get more into Chardonnae's vision for Englewood, we're going to take a caller. Thank you for calling the Englewood call. Oh, it looks like we lost that caller. See if you can call back. Call us at 312-738-1060. Again, this is the Englewood call, and I'm joined here by Englewood teen Chardonnae Nash, youngest Rage member, we are very proud of, and she's sharing tonight her vision for a beautiful Englewood, and how she's tired and how she's working herself against the negative stereotypes that seem to come up on our community. So Chardonnae, tell me, what can individuals your age do to kind of help the negative branding in Englewood? You talk about these governmental entities or the media or these movies or the magazines and the music or even just regular conversation on the streets. What can someone just like you, a 17-year-old, a junior or a senior in high school, what can they do to start changing the branding, the perception of the community?
They can do little things such as start picking up the trash around your house. You can start getting involved, or go to some of the churches and find out what you can do to help, or just start like getting involved with the kids that's around your community. Like get to know their name, get to know the people that live on your block, and you start with a change. That's how you start with a change.
That's right. Now I want to back up a bit, right? And I asked you, what is your vision, like, kind of for a perfect Englewood? You were telling me you wanted more gardens and more businesses, right?
Yes.
Can you tell me, in order to make all of those things, in your mind, you see this thriving community. In your opinion right now, what do you think that we as a community need to do to get there? What are the steps that we need to take, in your opinion?
First, we need to communicate and start reaching out to some of the organizations that's trying to help make a change instead of being a part of the problem. And yeah.
Sounds good. I just want to remind everyone to please call in. We're taking your questions, your call, your suggestions, and any positive news that you may have to share tonight on the Englewood call. Again, tonight we are talking about reimagining Englewood, and we're talking about changing the perception, changing what others think of us. our youth, Chardonnae Nash, the youngest Rage member that we have, is here, and she's telling us that youth in Englewood are pretty much a little heartbroken by the way that they are portrayed in media, by the way that they are portrayed, by the way that they are thought upon. Why, Chardonnay, do you think that it is important to value your neighborhood? What's important about your community that you live in, and in your opinion, why do we need to value it, or how can we value it better?
You need to value your community because that's where you live. That's where you raise generations out of that one community. And, like, you just need to value where you stay because that's your home. You got to take care of it as if you were sleeping in that house.
Tell me some more about your personal plans for your own life. You see, you've grown up in Englewood. Are you one of the youth? Or I want to say, are you one of the youth? What's your plan? Do you plan like most people do to get your education and to get on out of here? Or what? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. And if that's what you plan to do, that's okay. But I want to hear a little bit about you and what's your plans for your future. What's Chardonnay's plans? What's your hopes and your desires and your visions for you?
I want to get my PhD so I can be an OB gynecologist because if you read the statistics, a lot of young females, African Americans, contract a lot of STDs, HIVs, and I want to come back and I want to help and I want to open up a free clinic. And if it go well, I want to open me up a hospital and then I can add me a trauma center so it can alleviate some of the gun violence because, as you know, Englewood don't have no trauma center at all.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And again, we are going to shift gears just a little bit, and I want to delve a little bit more into some of the positive things in Englewood. What are the things that you think are happening? The stories that should be getting told that aren't getting told. Because see, for me as a youth, as a teenager in the community, the one thing that made me want to go into the news was the fact that honestly things were just like they are today. And in fact, they were a little bit worse when I was your age. Chardonnay, when I was your age, there was like 2 or 3 people getting killed on my block, like every day. And I'm not even joking. Like, I went to sleep to the sound of gunshots. I remember the day that I left for college, they shot through my front window. So what I wanted to share and what I want to know is how do we change that perception today? How can we work towards a positive change, knowing all of those negative things happen? In what avenues, in what organizations, in what fields can we work in to change that?
You have to work within yourself, like find people that's doing positive to mentor you and show you like it's a different way. And once you get one change, one mind, one person can influence a lot of people, which can help influence your community and make it a better place.
That's right. We're talking about changing the perception and influencing community. We want you to remember to save the date for our next meeting on July 21st. Thank you for joining the Englewood Call. Have a wonderful night.